Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, what happens if you stay with a narcissist too long? You only seem to forgive their sundry hurtful statements, things that they have missed in your life, things that they have caused you to miss out on. So in other words, you're just sort of trying to remember the positive, and this causes you to stay with them for far too long. In other words, it's the forgive and forget principle on too common a basis, so that you're really sort of losing track of all the sundry maladaptive things that you have had to do to stay in the relationships. In other words, you are now enabling the abuser. You're basically making headway for them to be able to continue this abusive behavior, whether it be manipulative, whether it be having power over you, controlling you, telling you what to do when and how to do it, how to feel and when to feel it. You know, you're just not allowed or permitted any authenticity yet. You just keep going back for more. You keep remembering the good things. And this is a great viewer question, I think, because it really speaks to the fact of what can happen when you can truly lose perspective or really in touch with reason or your authentic self when you're in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, psychopathic, manipulative, controlling in this manner. And you know, there's a great virtue into forgiving and forgetting, because oftentimes to hold a grudge hurts you more than it hurts them. To not forgive hurts you more than it hurts them. And to enable hurts you, and it also allows the abuse to continue. So that silence is acceptance. Silence is acceptance. And if you have already tried to go to task and discuss things with this person and they just shut you down right away, it's to show you there's an inequality, an inequity in the balance. There's a disharmony, an asymmetry. Things are out of whack in the relationship. And oftentimes people who aren't able to sort of desire that authenticity or desire to be heard, to be somebody. In other words, they're very comfortable just being meek, in the shadows, or, the abuse is just kind of, it's just not, they don't know that life could be better for them, and they don't venture out. They don't have many friends. They don't, or they just stay in that sort of that relationship pattern because either they don't want to do the work, they don't know that work needs to be done, they just, they just get sort of short-sighted, and they just keep, thinking it's going to be different, or it just doesn't, catch. And this can be a very, very difficult problem, especially as people get older, and especially as, people begin to expose the narcissist, or, find that, that this person is not with them in the ways that they truly need to. For example, when a life test comes up, you lose a job, you have health issues, you have drug addiction issues, you have financial issues, you have self-esteem issues, you have spiritual issues. Something happens and you find that this person just won't give you the time of day. They just don't have constructive input. They tell you basically to just buck up. Life is tough. I mean, they don't really consider or factor in your needs, particularly as is communicated in the relationship. So you find it difficult to sort of get your act together or get your steps together. In other words, just your memories are selective in nature. This is basically called selective memory. And, a lot of people can say, oh, it's, so important just to remember the good times. And the good times are very important, but oftentimes the human being needs to acknowledge and validate when there's anger and when there's abuse and there's hurt, because those emotions will rise very quickly, but they'll taper in a very slow manner. In other words, they will be present for a long period of time. And, this is why a lot of people have trouble with anger issues after they have been abused, and it's why it's so difficult to trust others after you've been in a relationship that has been, toxic in this nature, because the anger doesn't just go away like, here and then it's gone. I mean, there's a process. Anger hangs around. It hangs around for a reason, because you need to learn something from this experience. Your anger is trying to keep it in front of you in a conscious basis, even though it's an imperfect system sometimes. We don't always know why. We cannot, a lot of people have trouble articulating their feelings, but the anger can become chronic. It becomes so chronic that you don't even know that it's there. It's kind of like you lose sensitivity. You become desensitized. Being angry, rushing, shallow breathing, feeling depressed, feeling lethargic, just sort of being oblivious can become a new normal. And it really then hits rock bottom, though. That's part of the danger when you're on the forgiveness and then, stay with this type of manipulator, because you're basically, enabling them or rewarding them for doing what has been hurtful. In other words, their behavior is going unchecked. There's no checks and balances. And you're basically just, giving in your right to being treated fairly and kind of being treated well, and being able to experience a relationship that is positive and in your best interest versus only sometimes good. It's good, on a percent of the time, a small percent of the time, but that's not enough. And so sometimes people have difficulty with asking for more, thinking that they deserve more. Could it get any better? I don't want to seem too needy. And so they just end up living in a depraved or deprived sense. In other words, they're so starved that they've lost appetite for the good life. They've just completely lost that desire, and they don't know kind of what this person is doing behind their back. So if someone were to kind of step in and see this and say, doesn't it bother you that you're yelled at like this? Doesn't it bother you that you're getting these looks? Doesn't it bother you that this person is cheating? Doesn't it bother you that this person is including you? Doesn't this, and then they're just kind of like, oh, but, and they're just sort of focused on the good times, and their memory isn't sort of resonating or kind of paying attention to the red flags. They just become, forgetful of the bad times. And oftentimes what really becomes difficult is when the narcissist then goes, oh, by the way, I think we need to split up because it's not working out. And then that person's like completely mystified, but we've had so many good times, and then they're really in, the shock zone. And when you really can see it sort of coming, you can see the development if you're really sort of paying attention, but a lot of people don't want to scrutinize or second guess or, check, keep this person in check or keep the relationship in check for all sorts of reasons. But oftentimes it's fear of retaliation, fear of rage, fear of not being believed, fear of losing a family, being looked down by other family members, and I don't want to upset the apple cart. This is the family. This is how we run. No matter how dysfunctional it is, you always stand by your man, you stand by your woman, you stand by your family. This is just how it goes. So it's just like, you might as well just, So this can be a problem, though. This can really be a problem because you're not ever able to take your truth to the next level. You're not able to sort of see, you're getting the wool pulled over your eyes. And what really hurts is when you're not prepared for the unexpected, when you're not prepared for the big news, when you're not prepared to find this person's email, you're not prepared when you hear rumors, and you look at their phone, and you're you're not prepared when this happens, and then this big devastating. But then what ends up happening for those people who don't really have kind of a backbone, or just as a phraseology, they're looking for a reason to be taken back. In other words, they're easily hovered back. It's just like, well, as long as I take them out to dinner, or as long as I send them the little text with the little picture, I'm back in like Flynn. And then here goes the cycle of abuse over and over again. So you have to be very, very careful of this tendency to sort of annihilate, and sort of just be, oh, it's okay, and just sort of, minimize the importance and the destructiveness of those people who are manipulative in nature, and to not learn or be informed about these types. It's especially nowadays with the digital age, you must really become informed about what is going on. There's more ways for people to cheat, to do this, to do that, have affairs. I know we have a lot of people who ask about that here on the channel. What do you do? Well, I mean, that should be obvious. If someone belays your trust and breaks that commitment, I mean, that speaks volumes, and that is up to you. No one can tell you, about that. That is a determination you have to make for yourself. However, if you keep entering into this cycle of abuse and you keep trying to bring back these positive memories, that's all well and good, but you might also have to look at why you're not, examining those negative. What is so, why are you disclaiming this or saying this isn't part of life? Why are you just trying to wish this away or just turn a blind eye? You have to have a balanced perspective on things, because then you'll be able to buffer yourself from when some sort of news hits, or if this person is not there for you, they're not supportive. You found out that they've cheated. You would have, been better prepared, and yes, sometimes it is difficult to admit, and to admit maybe guilt that, that this could be, a self-destructive aspect, where, somewhere deep within you wants to stay naive, or stay green, or carefree, or there's a value that's keeping that in place that you don't want to let go. Maybe you've known this person for a long time. I'm not sure the specifics, but you have to be able to look things squarely in the face and to say, what's not good is not good. And it's not a reflection of me. It's just not, the chemistry, my needs are not being met there. And that is okay, but life will provide, and life will prevail, and my heart will go on. And soon enough, as soon as I'm able to kind of take stock of things and being able to assess what has gone on, so I don't continue to make the same mistakes, it's very important then for you to, do a body scan, an emotion scan for yourself, and then say, to what degree am I not paying attention to the red flags? Am I not heeding them? And to process this within yourself. And I think the other problem is that, particularly with people who are in the psychopathic range, if you're wanting to talk it out with them, I mean, they're just going to lie like it's nobody's business. They are experts at telling you what you want to hear. Oh, baby, it was just out of character. I had too much to drink. I just didn't, I thought it was you. I mean, they'll say the stupidest things. I mean, it's just, and then the person's like, oh, that's okay. And then they just want to keep that addiction. They want to keep everything cozy and, whatever. They don't want to upset the apple cart. They're just not comfortable. That's just not in their wheelhouse. Yet, part of relationships, are handling when things get difficult, and knowing when you need space, and knowing when to let another know that, there's consequences to be paid. In other words, this can't continue to happen. I can't have this in my life. This is a destructive force, and I'm sorry, but adios, bye-bye. I can't I cannot have this. And even though you might have had a commitment early on, or you felt a commitment, and so you had this vision of being together, well, that needs to get removed. You know, you need to kind of take down that image and build a new image. And, talk to people, and, get their take on things. Make sure that you're not short-sighting yourself, and that you're not really, to see. And I know that a lot of people, they get testy with relationships, but that ties up too many conditions. True love, you should be able to have an absence of fear. If there's too much fear and paranoia and sort of low self-esteem, that can, if those are ingredients in your relationship mix, you can better be sure that relationship is going to have is wrought with problems. And if it's hard for you to admit that, then you have to kind of practice kind of like admitting some things, and maybe people don't want to be alone, or they have kind of a, this is what women do, this is what men do. They have these ideologies that keep them staying around for too long. It's my religion wouldn't welcome me, my family doesn't want this, and then they're just sort of in this sort of, cocoon, and, they're just sort of in this insulated, situation. They're insulating themselves, and, that you have to be very careful of, because those are the people who end up marrying and staying with these people. And it's, when they find out that these people have second and third lives, that they become then ruined, emotionally. I mean, they start having breakdowns, they freak out, they did this to their kids, they've done that with, this neighbor, it's just, it gets to be like this big drama, situation. And, it's those people then, who are in, this disbelief, and they end up losing a lot. And oftentimes it's, it's kind of like, well, you're damaged goods, nobody wants me now. It's all these things that then can happen. So you have to kind of look and acknowledge, like, what were the red flags? In other words, I think that's another good exercise. What are the red flags? What were the red flags? And how do I know what is a red flag? And that is crucial to being able to, see reality. It's just kind of like staying in a job where they're firing people and you still think you're going to, work there for the next 40 years. In other words, they're downsizing, the industry doesn't work, it's like the buggy whip industry. If you thought you were going to have, 17 generations in the buggy whip industry, that industry went out with horse transportation, So those people had to heed the signs. And relationships, especially nowadays, as well as in employment, there's a lot of restructuring. There's relationship restructuring as well. And you have to be able to see the writing on the wall. I mean, you don't want to come home and being like, oh, honey, by the way, I sold the house, and, and I've, the bank accounts are all in my name. And, by the way, my brother's coming to take you to the airport. I mean, like, you just, people, this can happen. I mean, and it can be, this stranger things have happened. So it's very important that, you kind of get with people who can see, who can put the ear to the ground, hear the rumbling, so to speak. In other words, talk to people. Don't stay in abuse isolated, because oftentimes you're not taking advantage of the very valuable perspective that other people can have, that they can give to your situation. And you can say, you know what, that is right. I don't know why I let him cheat. I didn't know why I let her cheat. I don't know why I let them, drain the bank accounts. I don't know why I went out with the same type of person again. I mean, I've talked to somebody who, it's happened 5 times, where, just bank account drained, a professional reputation, on the line, 5 times, you've got to see that there's got to be something in the equation here, and that is you who has to, who's going to have to pay attention here. There's something consistent, and I think one of those consistencies is you. So you have to kind of look at the factor and say, okay, to what degree and why am I attracting this type, and to what degree can I stop that then now? And that is not good. Just like the people who kind of grow out of relationships, people need to grow, and not just superficially. They need to grow personally, not just superficial growth. Oh, I've got, more people on Facebook or whatever, and they consider that like, whatever. Look at some real personal milestones for yourself, and, things that you would like to do with your life, how you would like to improve your life, how you'd like to improve the world, help people, be part of the solution, not the problem. Do you want to do something constructive with your life? I mean, generally, as people get older, that's one of the problems, is that, their regrets are that, they didn't do specific things. And they feel a sense of emptiness and not able to continue to contribute. So don't let that be your mistake. Don't be caught off guard. Don't be the one who didn't see the red flags. Don't be the one who wasn't, who didn't surrender. Don't be the one who just was naive. Because those naive, especially, are the ones who the psychopaths will prey on like sliced bread. I mean, they feel it's just, it's like a jackpot to them. So don't be the target of that sort of situation. It's important to get wise. I definitely recommend, wisdom can be, and life can be, your greatest teacher and your greatest ally, that quality of being wise. And even if everybody else is on the bandwagon, don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to not be on Facebook. Don't be afraid to not be on Instagram. Don't be afraid to not be that type of person. Don't be pressured. Be your own, have it within you, and you're value driven, and don't have false growth, which is superficial to you. You know what is truly satisfying for you and what makes you feel good, and what is meaningful. But oftentimes people then, when they're with manipulators or con men or con women or people who are narcissistic or psychopathic, they kind of adapt their values because they don't really, have maybe a lot of values. So they kind of pick it up from this person, John Mellencamp, stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. And so it's very important that you stand and represent something despite the fact that there are people who are, to the contrary. Don't be afraid to disagree. Oftentimes people don't want, they're non-confrontational. They're very avoidant personalities. Oh, that's okay. And they don't realize, that they're avoidant personality types. And they're using this as a coping mechanism to avoid confrontation, avoid saying that's not right. They want to look like the good person. They want to look like the sweetheart. They want to look like the good wife, the good husband, And so, to be valued, they're like, just walk all over me. Well, to be of value doesn't mean that you get walked on. Those two don't go simultaneously, those don't go together. So begin to decipher that and being able to kind of say, are there some red flags? Are there maybe, okay, and is it okay for you to think for yourself on this? A lot of people, they don't want to think for themselves. They're scared. There's this, this group think, there's this, there's this social, value system where, the, social, circles are making the decisions and choices for you, and you're just, sort of blindly, what I do believe though is in having faith in yourself, and being able to know that you are a person of value and that you should not be controlled, abused, criticized, physically abused, lied to pathologically, cheated, all these different things that people have put up with, and that they, think that that's just part of their, how it's always going to be until something, it's never funny, it's funny until someone gets hurt, but until this gets really serious and you see the severity, it's okay for you to break out of that circle of bad friends, of bad influences, to stop listening to the bad music, hanging around with the wrong people, the people who swear, cuss, drug, drink, manipulate, whatever, all the different things that they're doing, personally, in business, in families. It's okay to be different. A lot of companies are very successful because they want people who are different, who are unique. I mean, you don't have to be a robot. You don't have to be a cutout from some other sort of thing. You are yourself, and that should be celebrated. And if you're with people who cannot accept you, support you, embrace you, and love you for who you are, and respect and value you, then you better tell them it's their loss, and, to kick them to the curb. You don't need that in your life. Life is difficult enough without adding more difficulty, okay? This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.